When one knows God's creative processes, how much more enduring one's own creations become, and how much more simply and powerfully one manifests God. Likewise, when one knows the rhythms of God's thinking, knowing how He keeps His body in absolute balance, each star in it keeping its own orbit with absolute precision, how much more powerfully can one keep his own body cells in rhythm with God's thinking, and extend one's knowing to heal others of lesser illumination. All men have all-knowing within the stillness which centers them, but awareness of the light comes slowly to unfolding man. The genius is one who is inspired with God's knowing, and the mystic is the super-genius of great illumination. Consequence of unbalance. In the Divine Illiad message are the following words: "The toxemia of unbalance is man's only ailment." Let us consider what that means. God thinks in balanced waves of light. His universal body is therefore in perfect balance. His entire universe does not vary in its balance by the weight of one electron. If there was the slightest variation in the balanced rhythms of God's thinking, for even one moment, countless millions of lives on millions of planets in starry systems of His body would be snuffed out instantly, and millions of years would elapse before life would again be possible upon those planets because of that momentary unbalance. Terrific eruptions upon nebulas and suns would transform them into entirely different intensities. Yet that is exactly what happens to a man's body when he becomes angry or fearful or hates another man. Our bodies are made up of countless miniature solar and starry systems, exactly as God's body is similarly constructed. If we upset the balance of their rhythmic motion, the wave patterns become distorted and erupt with a violence measured by the intensity of the unbalanced emotion. And that is not all, for an unbalanced and unrhythmic body is vulnerable to deadly microbes and other infections from which rhythmically balanced bodies are insulated. God is the fulcrum. To better understand the import of balance in regard to our thinking and the health of our bodies, it is well to fully comprehend the mechanical principle of the wave which motivates all bodies of matter. Consider a wave of water. Its action is that of a moving lever oscillating upon a still fulcrum. That lever draws its power to move from the still point upon the water's surface, which acts as the fulcrum of the wave lever. That still point and the harmonic repetitions of it which center every wave is the only unchanging point upon the wave. That is where God awaits to give power to the wave for its expression of energy. For God is the fulcrum of every wave of motion in the universe. Every other point above and below that fulcrum point is forever changing its condition. So long as the rhythmic balance of interchange continues, those measured waves will repeat their patterns with microscopic precision. But the shelving sand of the seashore will violently upset that rhythm, that waves go crashing upon the shore, just as a man's health or his business crashes for similar reasons. Two children playing seesaw fully exemplify balance or unbalance in the wave principle. So long as their interchange is equal and opposite, their balance is perfect, and they can repeat their swinging indefinitely. When either one upsets the rhythm, either or both may be hurt. Mankind is constantly doing just that to his body. Countless ills arise within his body, which he himself has created, by disregarding the law of balance in his thinking. As the matter of which his body is composed is but an electric record of his thinking, and as electricity is his servant obeying his will to build his body in the image of his thinking, his body becomes the distorted image which he himself has fashioned by his distorted thinking. Man's relation to God. It is imperative that he would heal himself or extend his balance to heal others, should fully know the import of God's relation to him as the still fulcrum of his power. Just as a pendulum could not swing its repetitions of rhythmic balance without its centering fulcrum of power from which it is extended, so likewise he could not extend his power to heal others without knowing himself as an extension of God. How much greater his power becomes when he knows himself as one with God instead of knowing himself as an extension. The illumination into cosmic conscious knowing is like unto the withdrawing of the lever into its fulcrum. The electric body is then forgotten, and one becomes the light of all knowing. That is what was meant by God's words in the Divine Illiad message when he said, "See me, know me, be fulcrum of thy own power." Love. For eons, man has been slave to the matter which composes his body because of his little knowing, instead of being its master because of his cosmic knowing. When man works alone, unknowing God in him, he is subject to all the ills of matter, while he who knows God in him is in command of matter to the extent that he knows God in him. Let us repeat the last part of the last sentence with another word, which means God. Let us say, to the extent that he knows love in him, for love and light also mean God. Love is the great insulator from every ill which can attack the body. Love is the great balance wheel, or spiritual gyroscope, which makes it impossible for one to injure his own body by emotions which poison his body. Every emotion of any nature which is not based upon love poisons the body, and tears every nerve to the extent of the variance of that emotion from the balance which love alone insulates one from. He whose emotions are based upon love commands the light waves which compose his body. The most virulent pestilence could not touch one who is thus insulated by love. He who eliminates love from his thinking and its consequent emotions is slave to his body and exposes it to toxic dangers in the measure of his unbalance, and his mind to the ravages of unbalance which lead to insanity. The principle which governs such variations is electric balance between both opposite pulsations of the heartbeat and their fulcrum from which they spring. All mental and physical illnesses arise from unbalance between these pulsations. The two opposite pulsations of the universal heartbeat of this electric universe manifest the division of the love principle into giving and re-giving, the life principle into birth and death. Likewise, the division of all of God's effects of motion into pairs of opposite expressions of every ideal of his thinking. Thus we have day and night, heat and cold, positive and negative, male and female, and countless other pairs of opposite pulsations, all motivated by the universal heartbeat, all interchanging with each other forever for each to become the other. Just as day gives to night to become night, so do vapors of heaven give to waters of sea to become waters of sea, and seas re-give waters to heavens to become vapors of heaven. Likewise, man is born into life that he may interchange with death to become death for the purpose of again becoming life. Every effect of nature, without exception, interchanges constantly for the purpose of finding balance in its opposite in order to become its opposite. Without it, neither man nor nation nor earth nor the stars of the heavens could continue to repeat their balanced selves. Witness the deserts of earth. They give naught to heaven for heavens to re-give. Cloudless skies cover their thousands of arid miles. How like unto man who would take all and give naught in return, or who would starve his soul for gold of earth.